Oh, yes, I feel it. I'm definitely getting closer to my dreams, and I do hope that you are as well. I am Tamara Westwood, your host here at SouLutions Radio this morning, this afternoon. Wherever you are in the world, wherever you're listening, I'm so grateful you're here for this very special show. We have our wonderful guest, a knowledgeable young man who's so moving in the direction of solutions for our people, our African, Moorish, Aboriginal people across the planet, waking us up to the truth. Umar Abdullah Johnson. I want to bring him onto the show because we're going to be talking about some very important topics, highlighting the new film that he's been a part of, Hidden Colors. Welcome to the show, Umar.
Peace and blessings, Queen. Thanks for having me. It's an honor to be with you again.
I'm so grateful you could take time out in your busy schedule. I know that you're on a mission, and you're actually making things happen and move around the world for us and our children. So the topic today is that fantastic film that you've been a great part of, the Hidden Colors film by Tariq Nasheed. And it was done in Los Angeles. I want to get a little background about it. Of course, I went over to the site and checked out the trailer and read up on it. And I've been eagerly awaiting, our show today because you sent me a text about it, probably about a month ago or so. And so kind of had to hold on tight, but now we're ready to talk about it. So, with our limited amount of time, I just want to get right into it. The film is so important for our people. So please, take the floor.
Indeed. Well, I was contacted probably about a year ago by an assistant of Brother Tariq Nasheed, who said that they were interested in having me be a part of a documentary that he was planning to discuss the hidden history of African people throughout the world. And so, of course, I wanted to participate. I thought it would be a good idea to participate. I primarily wanted to highlight issues of our current struggle that we face as African people, because I try to stay political as much as possible. But, of course, the historical aspect is true as well. And basically, the intent of Hidden Colors was to show that African people had, in fact, circumnavigated the entire earth, the entire globe, all continents, and were the first to build civilizations on each and every continent, including Europe. The first Africans in Europe were called the Grimaldi, who had migrated to Africa between 20 and 40,000 years ago. And in the process of being in Europe during the Ice Age or immediately thereafter, they lost the ability to produce melanin in significant amounts. And so the modern-day European is a descendant of the older-day African Grimaldi peoples who had migrated there a very long time ago. In Asia, we know that the first emperor of Japan and China were both Africans. We know that the samurai warrior was created by an African who had came over from Africa to build the Asian martial arts, which was a descendant of the African martial arts that had predated it for a very long time. We know that the ninja warriors were also started by Africans, and as you know, the ninjas wear all black. And in Japan, they even have a saying that if you don't have a little bit of African blood, you can never truly be a samurai. In America, we also know that Africans were the first people here. Christopher Columbus, in his diary, clearly articulated that black people were the first people here. He stated that he saw Africans just like the ones he saw when he was in Africa. Prior to coming to America, Christopher Columbus was involved in the West African slave trade, and he was actually given a map by Africans that had shown him exactly how to get here to America. He did not get here by accident. It was not by fate, but he was told how to get here. There is, in fact, a certain current that Africans have known of for years that will bring you over here if you get in touch with that current by sea. Central America, South America, there are pyramids that are identical to the ones in Kemet. In fact, the Almic deities, which are a collection of gigantic concrete stones of African gods, many of the Almics, all of the Almics, have Africoid features, and many of them are even wearing the helmets of the African warrior. For example, Ixtilton, which is one of the more famous Almic deities and statues, he's wearing the helmet of the Ethiopian warrior. There was money from Africa that was actually found here in the so-called New World before slavery began also. So Africans are, in fact, indigenous to every part of the world. But I just want to underscore that we all have our origin in Africa. Africa is where we come from. The Moors are a nation of Africans who left Africa, went civilized Spain and other parts of Europe, and ultimately ended here in America. But the Moors were not the only Africans in America. There were other groups of Africans who were here as well. But Moor is only one nation of many Africans who had set out to explore the New World.
This is just, I think we're going to have to do a series because there's just so much to cover here. You touched on the history, and of course, history is so important, but we don't want to just stay stuck in the history about what was. You know, we are standing on the shoulders of the ancestors and all that they've done, and it's so important to bring that to the fore because, of course, there are brand new generations coming up all the time that must know their history. But let's focus on present day. You know, I know that you spoke a great deal about what's happening now and the greatness that we're still expanding.
Indeed. Presently, I think one of the biggest problems we have as African people is I think we're getting too caught up in the information. Information without institutions is ultimately useless. And I think one of the biggest mistakes that those of us who consider ourselves to be conscious or to be part of the conscious or revolutionary community, the biggest shortcoming that I believe we are making, and I think is a shortcoming that many of our ancestors can see in heaven, and that is that we are not as serious about building institutions as we were before. We have more information at our disposal than any time before. We are the most knowledgeable Africans in the history of the world outside of the Nile Valley Africans who built the greatest civilizations. But in terms of pure information about oneself, we have more than any other African, at least since the beginning of slavery. But that information has not led to institutions. For example, when you look at the Black Panther Party, they had breakfast programs, they had lunch programs, they had health programs. You look at Marcus Garvey, he had a steamship corporation. He had a factory to make black dolls for our daughters. He had universities. You look at Booker T. Washington and many other blacks who started the historically black college movement. They built institutions to teach black people. You look at the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, they had restaurants. Okay, they had programs to teach black children who they were, and then they had jobs where they could employ them. They were institutions. We don't have institutions. All we have is information, and we're being content with the information. You know, we have lectures, we do movies, you know, we write books, you know, we talk. We dialogue, we talk, we have TV shows, radio shows, but where are the information? Where are the institutions? Now, we don't need to stop doing what we're doing. We need your show. We need the documentaries. We need the books. So I'm not saying we should stop. By no means. Information gathering must continue. It is necessary. I'm simply arguing that it's not sufficient. Ultimately,
it's the beginning. It's the beginning.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And the reason why the information is not leading to institutions is because black people are not interested in using their income for their own improvement.
Oh, right there. In the pocket.
You follow me?
It all comes down to the money. Follow you.
It all comes down to the money. Black people do not trust themselves enough, each other. We do not trust each other enough, nor are we committed to the struggle enough to want to sacrifice our savings for our improvement. That is the crux of our problem.
Now, Umar, would you agree that that's due to the fact that many of us are comfortable now?
Very much so.
Comfortable now?
Very much so. In fact, we're comfortable we're cautiously comfortable. And I say cautiously comfortable because black people are aware that there is a deliberate movement to reduce our population and ultimately exterminate it from this country. A lot of us, even if we don't know the ins and outs of the eugenics campaign against African people, we know enough just by watching television and seeing what happens in the public schools and with prisons and with police brutality. We know that we are subject to a different set of regulations than white folk do. You know, people always talk about the law. Yeah, there's one law, but there's different regulations. See, white people have their regulations, and then black people have their regulations, you know. So as a result of that, we see that there's a differential treatment. So when I say that we're cautiously comfortable, it means that we are crossing our fingers and hoping that we are not the next one on the list to be inadvertently shot by a cop. We hope we are not the next ones on the list to be arrested fraudulently for drug possession when we didn't have anything on us. We hope we are not the next ones on the list whose child is going to be put in special ed unjustifiably or referred for psychiatric drugs unnecessarily. So we're crossing our fingers, hoping we are not next. The ignorance of that position is ultimately you will be next. Because if any program that seeks to remove an entire population, sooner or later it has to get around to you. Like people ask me, they say, Brother Umar, why are you so strongly fighting this issue? You're okay. You have your education. You've never been to jail. Your daughter's okay. Why are you worrying? Because I am a black man. And no matter how successful I am, no matter how well educated I am, the truth of the matter is the movement is to exterminate my people, which includes me. So even if they're not trying to take me out right now, sooner or later, they got to get around to me too. So am I going to wait for them to come to me, or am I going to fight it where I am right now?
Right. And that cautious comfortability, if there is such a word. I just created the word, okay. But anyway, that caution with the fingers crossed, it's stagnating.
Very much
so. We're not moving forward. And so, of course, we need to talk and we need to have shows and we need to have film. But in your view, how would we begin to get past the fear, the lack of trust?
The only way to get past fear is to face it. The trust is one of the ramifications or side effects of post-traumatic slavery disorder or the deliberate teaching of inferiority. And so in order to get past that self-hatred and the inferiority, we have to engage in what I call self-directed mental reconstruction therapy. Mm-hmm. Self-directed mental reconstruction therapy. Now, to some extent, we're already engaged in that with the information. Your show, the documentaries, the books, that helps with the knowledge. But knowledge is only one part of the therapy, only one part of the treatment. People also have to honestly look at themselves and the beliefs that they hold about black people. This is going to be difficult. Black people are going to have to admit to themselves that they still feel inferior. They're going to have to admit that they do think white people are more intelligent. They're going to have to admit that they think white people are more beautiful. They're going to have to admit that they don't think black people are capable of self-government. You have to sit down, pull out a piece of paper, and write down every negative belief you have about yourself and your race. And then once you see what it is you think about yourself that is inaccurate, you then have to deliberately work on reconditioning your unconscious. And the way you recondition your unconscious is by consciously keeping negative content from coming into the mind, while at the same time constantly introducing your mind and repeating within your mind positive information. See, the unconscious is the creature of habit. The reason why we hate ourselves so well is because we were taught that we were nothing for 243 years. So you can imagine after being told the same thing for 243 years, the conditioning is strong. So to uncondition, you have to do the same thing. Now, the good news is it won't necessarily take you 243 years to uncondition the self-hatred, but it will be extensive. The problem is we're still allowing ourselves to be subject to negative information, and we're allowing our children to be subject to negative information as well. So while we are engaging in self-directed mental reconstruction therapy ourselves, our children are being victimized by white supremacy because we're not controlling who teaches them, we're not controlling where they're taught, we're not controlling the music, the movies, or the information that they're looking at. So we're making slaves in our houses right under our own nose.
So very true. I mean, we hear people speaking about, oh, well, racism is dead. It's not even an issue anymore. Why are you making a big deal about it?
The cult of Obama's personality. Black people have created a cult of Obama worship, Obama glamorization. I had an intense discussion last night following a parent meeting I had here in Pennsylvania with a sister from the Caribbean who believes Obama is just absolutely infallible. And black people are politically ignorant. We are politically immature. We're politically retarded. We don't understand anything about American politics. We don't understand anything about global politics. And I say that because if you look at the love we have for Obama, here's a man who's done nothing for black people ever in his life, and you have black people running around worshiping him like he's Dr. King or Marcus Garvey or Malcolm X. He's nothing like them. He has nothing in common with those gentlemen. Barack Obama is simply a pawn, a tool that's being used by the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, the Federal Reserve, and the Bilderbergers to finalize the last stage of white supremacy, which is what they call globalization, to permanently make white people the kings and queens of the world and to permanently make black people the slaves of the world. That is the intent of globalization. Barack Obama has put AFRICOM in Africa, so we have military bases from the United States all across Africa, and that is being done in case Africans decide to stop allowing their resources to be exploited by Western interests. Obama will have the military there who will be able to subdue Africa. One of the first acts of office that Obama took was that he reversed the federal ban that prevented money to be used for groups in Africa that advocate for abortion and hysterectomy. This is Obama. He took money from historically black colleges and universities and gave it to white colleges so they can recruit Hispanics. Okay, so when you look at what he's doing, not forget what he's saying. When you look at what President Obama's doing, he's no better towards black people than Bush, Clinton, or any other president that we had. I don't think we have to ridicule him or hold him to a higher standard. I say we should judge him the same way we judge everybody else. He's a president of the United States. Every president of the United States, from George Washington to President Obama, was white, was a racist, and has done nothing for black people. He's no different.
Mm-hmm. So we must think clearly. And
yes, think clearly.
History,
not emotionally, but clearly.
Right. So history does help you to see, that there is a repetition of certain things that continue.
Yes.
I mean, how could one person come in and turn everything around anyway? When you really think about it, for hundreds of years.
But he doesn't even have the intent. But see, we have to separate out someone who has the intent of doing something for us and someone who doesn't even have the intent. President Obama isn't even interested in black people. He's not even interested in black people. We voluntarily decided to become his unofficial propaganda machine. All the problems we have in the black community, how in the hell can we sit by and say the president has no obligation to us for 8 years, even though he's clearly advocating for homosexuals, he's clearly advocating for white women, he's clearly advocating for Hispanics, and he's clearly advocating for illegal immigrants. So black people are totally content with having the president take care of every other so-called minority group except their own. And we are in the worst shape. How in the hell can we stand by and do nothing? It's because of our sickness. See, a self-hating people don't have a problem with being mistreated. A self-hating people don't have a problem with being mistreated. A woman who is being domestically abused by her lover doesn't have a problem with being victimized because she believes that she is supposed to be victimized. So the reason why black people have no problem with Obama's neglect is because we have been taught that we are not worthy of any president's time or attention.
Now, Umar, you brought out a word, the word of taking care of. That phrase, taking care of. It seems that we're dependent. That the government is supposed to be for the people, and it seems that we're allowing things to be done to us instead of us taking a stance and build, as you said, institution.
Exactly.
With power in back of it.
Exactly. You got to have institutions. See, the United States government was designed for rich, white, property-owning men with power. And it is run by rich, white, property-owning men with power. People get into politics to protect their wealth. They don't get into politics to get wealthy. They get into politics to protect what they have, to reduce the government constraints on their ability to get rich through capitalism. Black people are actually trying to get a foot up through government. You can't get a foot up through government. The only thing you want from the government is resources and access to opportunity. Resources and access to opportunity. Black people don't get resources and access to opportunity from the We don't hold none of our leaders accountable. We don't hold none of our elected officials accountable. Not only Obama, we don't hold our mayors accountable. We don't hold our city council folk accountable, our governors, state rep, U.S. rep, state senator, U.S. senator. There's no elected official in the past 40 years that has ever had to be accountable to black people. And because of that, they can do whatever the hell they want. Exactly. I mean, look at Obama.
And see?
Obama has done nothing and is treated like a hero. Just because he's in the White House, he's a hero. That is absurd. No other people would tolerate that type of behavior except a slave.
You said a few things there about not tolerating, and holding accountable. So that speaks to power. We do not understand how much power we have and can have in numbers.
Exactly. You know what? It's political physics. I think every black person should have to take an intro to physics course. Because in physics, what are you taught about power? You're taught that power, speed, effort cannot be stopped unless it is contraindicated by power of equal or greater force. Period. So if we want to do anything about the power of white supremacy, then we have to develop ourselves into a force that is equal to or greater than that of white supremacy in order to stop it. You know what we're trying to do? We're trying to get a change through moral persuasion. We're trying to convince white folks that what they're doing is wrong and they should start taking care of us. We've been doing this for 400 years. That's how sick it is. Because what is the definition of insanity? To do the same thing over and over again, to realize that it does not work. Moral persuasion.
Now, economics.
Oh, my gosh. The economics is ridiculous.
I mean, we look at the statistics of where we're spending our money, and you see how much power we have in that money. Right now, I don't know the figures, but I know that we spend a lot of money in being consumers.
Yes, indeed. Economic power. As Marcus Garvey said, no race can be saved except through a thorough industrial foundation. But again, black people spend their money with people who they know absolutely can't stand their guts, and they do it anyway.
Very interesting.
Nobody could do that except a people who have no self-regard. And the only people who have no self-regard are slaves. 21st century slaves. No handcuffs on the hand because the handcuffs are on the mind.
Exactly. You don't need it on the hands if you've got it on the mind.
Exactly. We're being controlled by remote control.
So where do we begin?
Well, number one, struggle and sacrifice. I mean, black people have to be willing to get out of their houses and organize black people. We have to be willing to do something we haven't done in 40 years, and that is door-to-door, street-to-street campaigns. But most black people are too lazy. We want to get people through internet. And yes, we can use internet, we can use television, we can use the telephone, but guess what? The best election campaigns ever run in any country to get someone elected to office through popular vote have been done through door-to-door campaigns. There's nothing like having someone in your face telling you we need to work together. Okay, a lot of black folks, they haven't caught up to the technological age, and we can't wait for them to do that. We got to go door to door. So put down Facebook, put down YouTube, put down all of that, and let's start dealing with each other face to face. Stop letting the technology separate us from each other. The technology is not going to, because the technology is controlled by them. Through the technology, they're able to monitor everything that we do. So the technology is not the best way to get people. The best way to get people is to stare them in their eyes.
Hello, are you still there?
Yes, ma'am, I'm still here.
Okay. I thought we did. I think we had a little bit of a glitch there. And see, that's one of the downfalls of technology. But if we are face to face, like you're saying, we can truly connect, and we can also really influence the children. I know anyone who's listening and you're not familiar with Brother Umar, he works with children. He is a school psychologist and now a principal. Is that correct?
I have my principal certificate, and I'm considering it's a very high likelihood, about 90% or so, that I'll probably be taking over a school. I've been offered a couple jobs, and I'm thinking about going back into the school as a principal because I'm sick and tired of seeing what's being done with our sons. I'm getting tired of people saying they can't learn, that they have ADHD, that they need drugs, that they need special ed. I'm so tired of it that, it has now motivated me to go into the school before I get my own school done, because I was hoping not to become a principal until I had my own school, but that's going to be a couple years out because I have to build the capital for that. So I'm going to have to go back into one of these public or charter schools and be principal. Of course, that's going to be an issue for me because you have to answer to the Board of Education or the Board of Directors at the charter school. And, of course, you have those white teachers, a lot of whom who don't want to teach, who you also want to have to vie with. But for the sake of our boys, I believe it's worth it.
Oh, that's powerful. Well, that in itself, working with the children, is the starting point because that is the next generation. I think for many people, it may be difficult to switch their minds around at this point. But beginning with children is so very important, and letting them know that they are cared about and that they are actually so important is major. Many of our children, especially boys, don't have anyone to look up to.
That's right.
Anyone to model after.
That's right.
So I just commend you for what you're doing. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I appreciate it. It's interesting because I was in a meeting, and they asked me, they said, well, what would you do differently here? How do you think that, what would you use? What would be the strategy that you use to engage students, given as though, these schools that you're considering coming into, haven't really made annual yearly progress in a couple of years? What are you going to do? I said, well, the secret weapon is myself. I said, once you have a good educational leader, a good instructional leader, a good instructional supervisor, someone who the parents and children know that they can trust and rely on, that right there improves morale, that improves school culture, school climate, and test scores go up. So you have to have the right people. Education is like therapy. It don't matter what kind of system you have in place. The system can be perfect. You're only as good as the people that you have working that system.
Yes, the ones who are implementing that. Powerful. Well, Brother Umar, I'd like very much for you to share how our listeners can view this wonderful documentary that you're a part of, Hidden Colors. Is it being premiered throughout the country? And if not, how can someone get it premiered in their hometown?
I'm not sure if it's still being shown in any of the theaters across the country. It was. It was shown in most of the major cities on the eastern seaboard, also on the western seaboard. I think that it's no longer in the movie, but you can order it. You can buy it off Amazon.com. You can also go to HiddenColorsMovie.com. HiddenColorsMovie.com, I believe you can purchase it there. Most of the individuals who I know purchased it off of Amazon.com.
Wonderful.
And, of course, if individuals need to reach me, they can contact me at 215-989-9858. They can also get me on Facebook, Umar Abdullah Johnson, or they can email me, umarabdullahjohnson@yahoo.com. I'll be headed down to Jacksonville, Florida. I'll be speaking in Jacksonville, Florida tomorrow, Sunday, on the psychoacademic war against black boys. I'll be speaking in Milwaukee, Wisconsin next Sunday on post-traumatic slavery disorder. I'll be in Austin, Texas on June 11th, Raleigh, North Carolina, June 25th, Durham, North Carolina, August the 28th, Harriet Tubman Center in Harlem, New York. I believe that is August the 10th.
Fantastic. Brother Umar Johnson, in Hidden Colors, which is featuring our guest today and some of our past guests, Dr. Phil Valentine, Sabir Bey, and hopefully soon, Dr. Francis Press-Welton. I thank you so much for joining us. Brother Umar, I look forward to our next topic. I thank everyone. Peace and blessings, and let's focus with clarity.